On today's episode, the Chicago Blackhawks get overpowered by Cale Makar and Nathan MacKinnon in the season opener. I'll go over the good, the bad, and everything in between from the Blackhawks' 5-2 loss to the defending Stanley Cup champions. All that and plenty more right here on Locked On Blackhawks.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Today is Thursday, October 13th. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me out on Twitter at JackBushman2, or you can also check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And if you're listening to the audio version of today's episode and you like what you're hearing, then please go and show some support first by following the podcast. Make sure to go and rate the show with 5 stars as well. And if you're tuning in through Apple Podcasts or through Spotify, then you can also go and leave me a review. And the best part about it all is that it's 100% for free wherever you may be listening to your podcast. Go and follow the show right now, and you'll be able to get the latest episode as soon as it comes out each day. And if you're not already watching the video version of today's episode, then you got to be sure to go and check out Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube, because every episode moving forward, folks, throughout the entire regular season is going to have a video uploaded to YouTube as well. So if you haven't done so already, please do me a huge favor. Go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. Really helps me out more than all of you know. Also, go and smash the like button on this video down below and comment as to your prediction of tonight's matchup between the Blackhawks and the Vegas Golden Knights. And last, go and ring the bell, turn on those push notifications, and that way you can get notified when the episode gets uploaded to YouTube each and every day. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. And thank you all for making the show your first listen here to start off your day. To open things up, let's jump right into it. The Chicago Blackhawks lose 5-2 in their season opener to the Colorado Avalanche out in Denver. Of course, the game didn't start for basically an hour late due to the banner ceremony that Colorado had. But a lot of cool moments there and a lot of cool memories as a Blackhawks fan, thinking back to the days when my team was kind of in that situation and we would be the ones on opening night that would have all the celebrations. But a really cool event. I thought Colorado did a really good job, even though it took forever. A lot of cool parts. Obviously, all the small things. I don't know why I couldn't spit that out. Was a huge song throughout their run. And really cool to see Jack Johnson, Blackhawks defenseman now, go out on the ice and join his teammates arm in arm to kind of watch the video ceremony. A really cool moment before the game for the Blackhawks. New defenseman Jack Johnson. That might have been the only cool moment of the game, because right out of the gate, it was pretty clear the Blackhawks were just in over their heads. I mean, Colorado's just on a completely different level. Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar were absolutely unstoppable. And it's kind of funny because all 5 of the Avalanche goals basically looked the same. Like they were really just doing the same thing. And I think the Blackhawks should, kind of take some notes on what happened last night, because while they did definitely get outplayed and there were a ton of chances for Colorado to make this like 8 or 9-1. I mean, there were a lot of opportunities where they just somehow didn't stick it into the yawning cage. Either Petr Mrazek made an incredible save, which I'll get more into here in just a moment, or they just fanned on the yawning cage, hit the side of the net, whatever it was. It was clear early on that the Blackhawks weren't going to have any answers for the big guns of the Colorado Avalanche, and that's kind of what led to this thing getting out of hand in those opening 40 minutes. The Blackhawks, Petr Mrazek held on as long as he could in that first period. I don't know how the Blackhawks were still tied up with Colorado through like 10, 15 minutes there, but eventually the Avs are going to strike when you give them that many chances, and they kind of ran with it there in the first and second periods. The Blackhawks also didn't help their cause because they took 6 penalties, and I talked about this on the show yesterday. One of my biggest keys for the Blackhawks to stay competitive in this game last night, it probably should have been not to take so many penalties, but I knew that was just going to happen against a really fast Avalanche team that was going to control the puck as often about as I expected. So when the Blackhawks, when you're going up against a team that's going to control the puck that much and is that fast, unfortunately, you're just going to be taking penalties, especially when you're a superior or an inferior team. You got some youngins on defense. That's just what's going to happen. And the Blackhawks PK was not able to kind of roll things over from the preseason, where in in their final 5 games, they actually won 15 for 16 as a group while shorthanded. So I was hoping that was going to translate over into this opener against Colorado, but they're just simply too lethal. It wasn't a fair matchup out there whenever Colorado had the man advantage. They really made the Blackhawks pay last night with 4 power play goals on their 6 chances. So, yeah, that's definitely something the Blackhawks are going to have to clean up. But to be fair, not every night they're going to be going up against, the defending Stanley Cup champions and perhaps the back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, because there really should be no reason for Colorado to slow down. They are still absolutely stacked, have offensive weapons up and down the lineup. And yeah, it was just apparent that the Blackhawks weren't on their level last night, but we could have predicted that. Nothing really too surprising from this one. Like, we knew the Blackhawks were going to get outplayed. No one had the Blackhawks winning last night. So the first 40 minutes, while they were very lopsided and ugly, it also didn't really tell us anything, because I think that's kind of what folks expected to happen when you put up, this Blackhawks roster that's competing for one of the worst teams in the entire NHL up against the Colorado Avalanche, arguably the best roster in the entire NHL, and a team with a whole lot bigger aspirations right now. So the Blackhawks, it is what it is last night. I just was happy to see them fight until the end, if I'm being honest. Like, I thought that was maybe the most impressive part, because maybe not the most impressive part, but considering all that they've been through and the way they've lost in recent years, I expected that to be uglier. And look, the first 40 minutes were ugly, but the Blackhawks didn't quit at the end. And that was kind of what made me the most impressed. So I'll kind of break all of that down here once I dive into the positive takeaways in just a moment. But the Blackhawks, really, I thought in the third period, and even at 5-on-5 in the second half of the game, I thought they looked pretty good all in all, but the penalty kill just really put them in a hole, because they couldn't get a stop. And against this Avalanche power play, yeah, I'm not going to be too mad about that. It's just definitely something that Luke Richardson doesn't want to have kind of keep plaguing his team throughout the course of the season. A bad penalty kill has plagued the Blackhawks for far too long. So I think it's more fair to gauge how this Blackhawks penalty kill is going to be when they're not going up against elite competition like Colorado. And we'll get a taste of that tonight when the Blackhawks are back in action against the Vegas Golden Knights, looking to pick up their first win here of the season. All right, there are my first few thoughts from the Blackhawks' 5-2 loss to the Colorado Avalanche in the season opener last night. Coming up in just a moment, I will get into some of the lone bright spots, because despite the Blackhawks coming out on the wrong end of the final outcome, I did still think there were positive takeaways here and there throughout the way. But first, I need to talk to you all about BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. You can find all of the latest football developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts on whatever game you want to place a wager on. BetOnline is also your continued source for all sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and game scores. It's both the fastest and the easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including the MLB, MMA, boxing, and even golf. So head on over to the website today, or you can also use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action right now. BetOnline, where the game begins. All right, we're back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, getting on into segment 2. Wanted to talk about some of the positive and negative takeaways, individual takeaways that I had from last night's game. I already discussed the Blackhawks penalty kill being a massive issue. Going up against Colorado, it's hard to say they were horrible. I mean, the stat sheet's going to indicate they were horrible. 2 of 6 while shorthanded is not very good, but I'm going to wait and hold my judgment until the Blackhawks kind of take on some not as elite competition, and they'll be doing that tonight when they take on the Vegas Golden Knights. I'll get into a preview of that matchup here in just a moment when I wrap up the episode. But yeah, getting into some of the individual positive and negative takeaways that I had from last night, starting with the positives. First and foremost, I thought Jonathan Toews was spectacular, probably the best Blackhawk skater on the ice, and maybe looked as good as he did at any point last season in his first year back from returning. And I was just really impressed with Jonathan Toews because, in the preseason, he didn't look very good. There were times when he looked disinterested. There were people already counting him out, saying he's mailing it in, people dogging him. I posted a tweet of that play against St. Louis where he just kind of got caught in no man's land. It wasn't really doing a whole lot of anything, and people were absolutely ragdolling him. But this is a really big prove-it year for Jonathan Toews to kind of show not only the Blackhawks, but the rest of the NHL what he's still got, what he's still made of. And if he does, want to waive his no movement clause at the deadline, considering he's going to be $5.25 million at the very least, so it seems, maybe they'll split it another way. But I don't know if Jonathan Toews struggles. I don't know how many teams are going to be interested in him. I don't know who's going to be giving up assets to take on that type of deal. But if he plays the way that he did last night consistently throughout this first half, then yeah, let me tell you, there are going to be teams interested in Jonathan Toews because the speed looked good last night, the hustle, he was making plays happen on both ends of the ice. Usual Toews things, won 10 of 14 faceoffs, and of course scored the Blackhawks' first goal of the season, which I'm sure was a very nice relief for him after it took him 26 games to pot his first goal last year. It took him just 16 minutes this season. So Jonathan Toews was spectacular last night. I talked before the game about how I really wanted to see something from him, and the Blackhawks don't stand a chance if his line isn't doing anything. I thought that trio of Johnson, Radish, and Toews was pretty solid last night. Tyler Johnson also had a really nice primary assist as well on the Blackhawks' second goal of the game. So all in all, I really liked what I saw from the second line. And Jonathan Toews, baby, he could be back. Keep an eye on Johnny to see if he can kind of keep up this intensity early on in the season for the Blackhawks. Another takeaway I have to talk about Petr Mrazek, especially in the first and second periods. He was spectacular, and really all of Colorado's goals came on redirects right in front of the net where he didn't have an opportunity whatsoever. But basically everything he saw, he stopped last night. Petr Mrazek was awesome, and maybe that's not good news for the Blackhawks front office because they don't want Petr Mrazek to be stealing games out there and racking up more wins than necessary. But lots of credit to Petr Mrazek. He really bailed the boys out early and often. I felt bad for him because, the defense couldn't stop Colorado. He was just going to get tested over and over and over again, but he stood tall in his Blackhawks debut. So a tip of the cap to old Mr. Petr Mrazek for fighting hard throughout the way. And without his efforts in net, I don't even want to know what the final score is last night. 7-2, 8-2, 9-2. I don't know. It was ugly though. And Petr Mrazek did everything he could. Again, can't really blame him for any of the goals that Colorado scored last night. I was also really impressed with some of the younger defensemen. And Alec Regula, I thought, was spectacular defensively. There was one moment where it was kind of like not a welcome to the NHL moment because he's been up here for nearly 20 games already, but forget who it was on Colorado. They were just absolutely ragdolling him in the corner, though. But I was really, really impressed with Regula's defensive effort last night. Blocked a couple of big shots in front of the net, made some right reads in the D zone. Good first pass is something that really always sticks out to me about Alec Regula. When he gets the puck in the defensive zone, make no mistake about it, he's trying to get it out. He forces it up the boards hard, and that's something that Luke Richardson was emphasizing throughout the preseason was just go north. Go north. Don't make these D-to-D passes over and over again and let the other team kind of regroup. We're going to push the puck forward and we're going to go and win battles up the ice to keep it going in that direction. And I think Alec Regula fits that kind of structure of Luke Richardson's perfectly. He's really poised with the puck, and he also makes a great first read to get it out of harm's way. And then on the power play, I like seeing Alec Regula run a power play, man. I've always talked about how he has more to offer offensively than he gets credit for. So I picked him as my breakout player for the Blackhawks this season, and he was off to a good start, I thought, last night, other than kind of a poor penalty, and you can't be giving Colorado those chances. But for the most part, I thought Alec Regula held his own against the defending Stanley Cup champs, which is really impressive for the first game of the season. And then his defensive partner, Philip Rose, too. Those two being paired together, I was tugging my collar, getting a little bit worried because just not against this team. You don't want to be throwing those youngins kind of out to dry on the same pairing, a little inexperienced and just being stuck in their own zone. I was having nightmares about Alec Regula and Philip Rose being stuck out there against McKinnon and Makar. But Philip Rose, I thought he looked really sharp too. Like, moved the puck up the ice. I don't know if he's ever going to chip in that much offensively, but one thing that was pointed out to me on Twitter, shout out to my guy Wally Maz, how Philip Rose really uses that stretch pass well, and he's looking to turn things around from defense to offense in a hurry and make that breakout feed to get things going the other way. And I really think that's going to be a staple of the Blackhawks offense this year, because more times than not, they're going to get out-skilled on the ice, and the way they're going to be able to score is by catching their opponent napping in transition. We saw a lot of that last year too. I expect that to be a staple of the Blackhawks offense this season, and Philip Rose looks like he understands that. He's got some good size to him too. I think he's a little bit skinny and has to physically mature a little bit more, but I thought he handled his own just like Regula did, and being his NHL debut up against the defending Stanley Cup champs in their banner raising ceremony. I mean, it couldn't get any tougher for Philip Rose in his NHL debut, and statistically and analytically, he was the best Blackhawk last night. So got to give credit to a couple of those young defensemen, along with Jonathan Toews and Petr Mrazek, for being the bright spots in the 5-2 loss to Colorado last night. Getting into some of my negatives that I have, obviously, there's the penalty kill. I already touched on that. Also, I got to give a shout out to the power play. Both Blackhawks goals were scored on the power play last night. They didn't really set anything up and didn't cycle too well, but both times they kind of caught Colorado napping in transition and found a teammate backdoor for a tap-in goal. So credit to the Blackhawks power play. After going 1 for 26 in the preseason, they go 2 for 3 last night. Hopefully that's the area of special teams that can translate over to tonight's game against Vegas. But getting back into my negative takeaways, the PK obviously is 1. 2, I'm going with Andres Athanasiou, man. I don't know what he's doing out there sometimes. The speed is obvious, and that's what's going to give him chances. That's what's going to give him scoring opportunities. But he just didn't do anything last night, really. I mean, besides take a nasty spill into the boards and get kneed to the back of the head, which was a little bit of a scary situation. Fortunately, he's okay, but Athanasiou really let me down last night, and that top line even at 5-on-5 was not very good of Athanasiou, Domi, and Kane. Max Domi did wind up potting his first as the Blackhawk. That came on the power play, though. That top line still has stuff to figure out, and when you have Patrick Kane not getting the chances that he needs to be getting, that's a problem, because for any hopes of the Blackhawks, staying competitive in games this season, Patrick Kane's going to have to be involved early and often. And at 5-on-5, he just wasn't last night with Athanasiou and Domi. So that top line kind of still needs to prove that they can play together moving forward. Hopefully we'll see that tonight against Vegas, or at least before we head back to Chicago for the home opener on the 21st against the Red Wings. Another kind of negative I have from last night was the defensive pairing of Jared Tenorti and Connor Murphy. Going back and looking at all of Colorado's goals, seemed like those two were heavily involved in all of them. Like, Murphy just had kind of some poor positioning last night, and at times he would get too aggressive and go cheat towards the puck carrier, wasn't able to get back to the front of the net and protect in front of his goaltender. And as I mentioned, all of Colorado's goals really came from redirects right out in front of the net, basically in the slot, as low to the netminder as you can get. And a lot of the times the Blackhawks just got caught in rotation, and there was a soft spot left right in front, and Murphy a couple of times just wasn't able to get there. Tinordi too, I'm going to cut him a little more slack because he's only been with this team for 3 days now. But Murphy, I think that was a little unacceptable for him to play that poorly in the season opener, especially when we're supposed to be kind of relying on him. He's supposed to be the sturdy defensive defenseman. This was kind of how it went last year. Like, we expected more out of Connor Murphy, and it just didn't happen. Hopefully it's just one bad game, though. He can kind of brush it off, and the Blackhawks are going to need him to be better than he was last night, or else they're going to be giving up 5 or 6 on a nightly basis. So just some little things that you need to clean up. Just the gap control and letting guys go and stand in front of your goaltender all alone. It's never a good idea. So the penalty kill and just kind of some defensive gap issues and some breakdowns out in front of the net. Those are the two things I think that really cost the Blackhawks last night. And Jared Tinordi, I don't know if he's going to be in the lineup long term. He probably shouldn't be. He had a couple of good moments, but I already thought that both Philip Rose and Alec Regula are better than he is and deserve to be in the lineup once some of the other guys get back and healthy. All right, before I wrap things up on the show today, folks, I wanted to get into a quick preview of tonight's matchup with the Vegas Golden Knights, who won their season opener 4-3 against the LA Kings on Tuesday. The Blackhawks, of course, are in Vegas. This is going to be a 9 p.m. Central Time puck drop, unfortunately. The Blackhawks opening up the season on a 3-game road trip. Can the Blackhawks get a victory tonight? Perhaps. I mean, Vegas, they're a good team, but it feels like they're always going to have peaks and valleys, and the Blackhawks almost caught them napping a couple of times last season. I don't know if they're going to get a win here tonight, but if they play and put together the effort that they had in the second half of last night's game, they definitely got a shot. The fight level, that's what needs to be there night in and night out. The wins and losses, that's going to be what it's going to be. Against good teams, we don't expect the Blackhawks to win, but if they can fight hard, if they can play a 60-minute game and at least make it bearable to watch, then that'll be progress in all honesty. And Vegas, they got some pieces, but they also are kind of weak in net, and we could see backup Adin Hill tonight after who was in net for them in their season opener? I think it was Logan Thompson, if I recall correctly. It was Logan Thompson. They're banged up in net. Robin Leonard, the former Blackhawk, is out for the year. Blackhawks have another chance to kind of come in and play sleeper. No one's going to expect them to win this game, probably. Vegas still has some pieces here, especially on defense, and they're top heavy. They got, Mark Stone, Riley Smith, and Marcia So are still there. They added Phil Kessel in the offseason. Jack Eichel's the big one. Their decore's still really good. So I think the Blackhawks can go and put up a good fight in Vegas. I don't know if they're going to come away with a win, but how they play is more important than the final result. Don't forget that, Blackhawks fans. They're not going to be very many wins. That's just the nature of the beast and the reality of the situation we're in right now. But how the Blackhawks play, if we see improvements under Luke Richardson, look, there were a lot of games last season where the Blackhawks looked disinterested. And if we can cut the number of times that happens down, then that would be a W in my mind. So it's all about perspective here in this type of season. The first year of a rebuild, the Blackhawks aren't trying to be very good. So if you're getting mad that they're not, you probably got to understand what exactly is going on here and what they're trying to do. So your expectations kind of don't get crushed when the Blackhawks are probably 50 points out of a playoff spot by the trade deadline. But as for the Blackhawks lineup tonight, first in net, I would expect to see Alex Stalock. I don't think there's going to be any hesitation to put him in there after how well he fared in the preseason. And they're not going to give Petr Mrazek back-to-back nights. He's already going to be playing enough throughout the regular season. So expect to see Alex Stalock make his official Blackhawks debut tonight. As for the Blackhawks lineup, I don't know if they're going to have a morning skate. Probably not, if I had to guess. So we'll see what head coach Luke Richardson says when he talks to the media. But the interesting ones will be first with the forward group. Will Reese Johnson jump in for Buddy Robinson. And I don't know why Buddy Robinson was playing last night. Like, Reese Johnson actually is someone who could be part of this group moving forward. Buddy Robinson's just kind of a guy. And Jujhar Khaira at center, like, I don't know. Khaira made a horrible turnover last night that gave the Avs their opening goal of the game. I would get Reese in there as the fourth line center tonight, move Khaira over to the right wing, and bump Buddy Robinson out of there. I mean, they already sent him through waivers. They don't want him around. They want him in the AHL. I didn't understand the decision to sit Reese Johnson last night, but I don't expect him to be out for 2 games in a row. I think we'll see Reese Johnson at the fourth line center position tonight for the Blackhawks. On defense, it's all about whether or not Caleb Jones and Alex Vlasic are going to be healthy enough to play. If I had to guess, I would say that Caleb Jones isn't going to be quite ready to go. Saturday is probably a more realistic return date for him, and if not, then we'll probably see him for the home opener like Jake McCabe. Alex Vlasic is the interesting one, though, because it felt like he was close to playing yesterday. He just wasn't 100% ready. And I know the Blackhawks aren't going to play him. They're not going to risk having him getting injured in this type of season. They want to see what he has to offer, but they're not going to force him in there when he's not, fully healthy. He might be, if it was a playoff game, obviously he'd be able to go out there and play, but no need to force something. So we'll see if Vlasic can go tonight, but it would be interesting if he could, because once Caleb Jones and Jake McCabe are ready, I think Alex Vlasic is going back down to Rockford. So I'd like to see him in a game or 2 of action before that happens. Hopefully he'll be all good here tonight, but it will be interesting to see who he would draw in for. I would probably guess Jared Tenorti based on how it went last night, because Philip Rose and Alec Regula, as I talked about earlier, I thought they played pretty well. Seth Jones, Jack Johnson, I don't think you're drawing either of those guys out of the lineup. Johnson was okay last night. Seth Jones, I thought, looked really good defensively. Didn't know what he was doing from time to time in the O-zone. I would guess Jared Tenorti would be the one that came out, especially with how rough it was for the pairing of he and Murphy. Maybe move Jack Johnson down to the second D pairing with Connor Murphy, and then you could put Vlasic back with Seth Jones like they were earlier on in preseason. But it's all going to come down to whether or not the Blackhawks feel like Vlasic is healthy enough to go tonight. And if he's not, I expect the Blackhawks to roll with the same D core, which is a little bit unfortunate. I would think they wouldn't have any other choice, right? I think Vlasic certainly has the better chance to play than Caleb Jones. We'll see what happens when Luke Richardson talks to the media, but I think there are going to be a few changes tonight potentially, and then of course Alex Stalock will be in net for the Blackhawks. Hopefully, they'll carry over the fight that they had late in that game. Hopefully they won't take as many penalties and can stay at 5-on-5, because they hung in there with the Colorado Avalanche last night. And to me, that's impressive. You can even just hang in with the Avs at even strength. That's a win. And cut down on those penalties. Give yourself a better chance to come away with win number 1 tonight out in Vegas. All right, folks, I think that is going to take care of Thursday, October 13th episode of Locked On Blackhawks. Thank you all again for tuning into the show, and be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks right now, wherever you get your podcasts, and go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube, and you'll be able to get the latest episode as soon as it comes out each day. And after the show, go and check out the Locked On NHL podcast to get all caught up on everything that went down from the NHL's opening night. It's free and available on all platforms, so be sure to go and check out Locked On NHL right now, wherever you get your podcast. Once again, thank you all for tuning into today's episode. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me out on Twitter at JackBushman2, or you could also go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until tomorrow's episode, go Hawks. Let's go pick up a W in Vegas tonight, or at the very least, remain competitive throughout the way. And thank you again for tuning into the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.